Iran hostage crisis, a standoff between Iran and the U.S., created by Ashley March, Brianna wrote, and Caitlyn Plack. November 4th, 1979, over 60 Americans were taken hostage at the U.S. Embassy. For 444 days, the American captives were used as blackmail against the U.S. to obtain Mohammad Reza, to punish him for his wrongdoings during his rule. The Iran hostage crisis was a conflict between Iranian revolutionaries and the United States, where numerous hostages were taken captive by Iranian rebels. Eventually, they compromised and negotiated money for the release of the hostages. Over time, the relations between the two countries, media history, and the viewpoints of Americans were changed and affected forever.
The incident began when Mohammad Reza Pahlavi became Shah of Iran in 1941. He ruled as a dictator accused of numerous crimes, as well as destructing the basic rights of citizens. After riots against his rule, the Shah fled Iran. Mohammad Reza entered the United States for medical treatment, angering many Iranians because the Shah was considered a criminal in Iran. When he left, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, a religious leader and politician, became the supreme leader. Iranian rebels were angered at the fact. Jimmy Carter, the U.S. president at the time, would not give up the Shah. On November 4th, hundreds of revolutionaries took over the U.S. embassy and took 63 embassy workers hostage, with the support of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini.
The source of tension between Iran and the U.S. stemmed from an increasingly intense conflict over oil. American corporations controlled the vast majority of Iran's petroleum supply. However, in 1951, Iran's newly elected prime minister, a European-educated nationalist named Mohammad Mossadegh, announced a plan to nationalize the country's oil industry. Soon after the hostage crisis began, it became one of President Carter's foremost priorities. In April of 1980, Carter became frustrated with the slow-moving pace of diplomacy and started planning a risky rescue operation called Operation Eagle Claw. A severe sandstorm took place the day of the rescue mission, resulting in 8 servicemen casualties, and Operation Eagle Claw was aborted. To further discourage Americans, the hostages were released into small groups across the country. On the day of Ronald Reagan's inauguration, the U.S. freed almost $8 billion in frozen Iranian assets. Algerian intermediaries helped negotiations between the U.S. and Iran to free 52 captives held in the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, Iran.
The Iran hostage crisis models this year's NHD topic, Conflict and Compromise. The conflict is obvious. Iranian revolutionaries seized the U.S. Embassy located in Tehran because they wanted the Shah, a criminal in their country, to be returned. The refusal from the United States led to the revolutionaries taking over 60 hostages for 444 days. Many rescue missions were attempted, but it seemed as only a compromise would solve the conflict and get the hostages back to their homes. The U.S. demanded the hostages be freed. The revolutionaries offered to do so if the United States returned the Shah to Iran, but the United States refused. Mohammad Reza's death on July 27th settled the dispute whether or not the U.S. should release him to the Iranians. However, the hostages were still being held captive. In September, Iran offered to free the hostages in return for billions of dollars of Iranian assets held in the United States. The U.S. government had earlier ordered Iranian assets in the United States to be made unavailable. Iran finally released the hostages on January 20th, 1981, the day Reagan took office.
Iran was once a powerful ally of the United States. As the Iran hostage crisis began to unfold, the Iranian relations between the U.S. had entered a deep freeze, from which there appeared to be no hope of recovery. President Jimmy Carter immediately declared a national emergency and imposed a trade embargo and a freeze on Iranian assets in the United States, which totaled $8 billion. Purchase of oil from Iran was blocked, and a suit was brought into the International Court of Justice. Iranian diplomats were expelled, and Iranian students in the United States were required to have their visas checked. As a result of the crisis, the U.S. lost trust and all respect for Iran. The bonds between Iran and the United States were forever broken. The United States and many other countries still consider Iran a rogue nation, meaning it is a nation that ignores international law and supports terrorism. In Iran, the date of the embassy takeover, November 4th, is an official holiday, with the name Day of National Confrontation Against World Imperialism.
The crisis also impacted media history, being the reason the popular TV program Nightline was created. The Iran hostage crisis was widely known around the world, which made it important that everyone was kept up to date in the events as soon as something new occurred. An ABC program dedicated to giving news about the tragic event was created and named The Iran Crisis, America Held Hostage. Frank Reynolds anchored the program, which aired on November 8, 1979, 4 days after the U.S. Embassy was seized. Ted Koppel soon became the new host. On March 24, 1980, the 20-minute Monday through Thursday program became permanent and was renamed Nightline. The show started covering topics besides the hostage situation and expanded to a half hour on January 5, 1981. On March 30th, it also began airing on Fridays. The Iran hostage crisis was a big reason why we have the TV program Nightline.
The news of these events horrified Americans. They wanted Jimmy Carter to act quickly to get the hostages back and make sure the U.S. wasn't in jeopardy. The slow-moving conflict and the failed attempts frustrated the American public, creating increasing animosity towards President Carter and his administration. Americans' views of Iran also changed, now viewing them as enemies because they took innocent American citizens hostage. Most of the leaders rising to power and taking control of Iran at the time were Muslim, trying to change Iran to more of a religious country. So this also changed how Americans see Muslims.
The Iran hostage crisis demonstrated conflict and compromise greatly. When Iranian rebels took the U.S. Embassy workers hostage, it caused immense conflict between the U.S. and Iran. Eventually, the U.S. got the hostages released, portraying compromise. But this affected the relations, media history, and American opinions forever.